Egyptian foot, the endurance engine. There is a secret biological cheat code hidden inside the Egyptian foot that makes certain elite athletes physically impossible to outpace. It's not fitness. It's not discipline. It's pure geometry. Look at your foot right now. If your big toe is the longest and every other toe slopes cleanly downward toward your pinky, that's you. You are the endurance engine. Here is why you have an unfair advantage. Biomechanists call it propulsive economy. Your big toe generates twice the push-off force of any other toe. In the Egyptian foot, that force driver is also your longest lever. A longer lever at push-off means more distance for force to travel before it leaves the ground. Think of it as a mechanical dividend. Every time your heel leaves the turf, you are collecting a wave of energy that other foot shapes are simply leaking into the ground. While your competitors are fighting to stay efficient, your foot is channeling every ounce of energy through one optimized exit point. Eliud Kipchoge is the ultimate proof. He is the only human to run a sub-2-hour marathon, and his efficiency numbers are so high that they look like a glitch in the data. He didn't necessarily train harder than his rivals. He is simply running a more efficient machine. He is collecting a dividend they can't access. If you have this foot, you own the long game. Distance running, cycling, triathlon, any sport where the person who conserves energy best wins. You're not just built for endurance. You're built to make endurance look effortless. But straight line efficiency is one thing. What happens when the game requires you to change that line, fast, repeatedly, before your opponent can even process it? That's a completely different foot. Greek foot, the explosive catalyst. Your second toe is noticeably longer than your big toe. That single anatomical detail changes everything about how your foot interacts with the ground. Here's the mechanics. The Egyptian foot pushes off in a clean straight line. The big toe is the anchor. The movement is linear. But when your second toe is longer, your center of pressure shifts slightly laterally during push-off. That lateral shift creates rotational torque at the foot, meaning your foot isn't just moving you forward. It's built to twist, pivot, and redirect. The Egyptian foot is a drag racer. The Greek foot is a rally car, engineered for high-speed cornering on surfaces that don't cooperate. This is why this shape appears disproportionately in sports that require rapid directional change. When a defender commits to a direction and an attacker cuts the other way in 1/10 of a second, that cut is happening at the foot. The athlete with more natural lateral torque at push-off changes direction before the defender's nervous system has even registered what happened. Look at Lionel Messi. His entire game is built on one ability, changing direction faster than any defender can process. His cuts aren't just fast. They happen at a different biomechanical moment than what defenders are calibrated for. They're not slow. They're paying a physics tax on every lateral step that he simply doesn't owe. The catch is context. On unpredictable natural terrain, the environment this foot evolved for, that lateral torque is pure advantage. On modern flat gym floors, the same mechanics can create rotational stress up the kinetic chain over time. Your foot was built for the ancient world. The ancient world wasn't level. If you have this foot, explosive agility is your edge. Racket sports, football, soccer, basketball, anywhere the ground situation changes faster than the playbook does, you have the architectural upper hand before the first whistle blows. Roman foot, the foundation platform. Your first 3 toes are nearly identical in length, creating a broad square front. If you've spent years feeling like your feet are cramped in every standard shoe, this is why. The shoe industry was built around the Egyptian foot's narrow taper. You've been quietly paying a comfort tax for years that has nothing to do with your foot being wrong. Here's what that wide front actually does. Most foot shapes roll force through a sequence, heel to arch to toe, with the push-off concentrated at a single exit point. The Roman foot doesn't work that way. That broad, even front distributes your body weight across the entire forefoot simultaneously. In biomechanics, this is called uniform load distribution, and what it produces is extraordinary lateral stability. Your foot doesn't have a single weak point in its contact footprint. It has 3 equal points of contact across the front, creating a tripod. You probably don't roll your ankles often. This is why. Most ankle sprains happen when weight transfers to the edge of the foot faster than the stabilizing muscles can respond. When your foot is distributing load uniformly, there's no sudden transfer. The tripod holds. Think about Simone Biles. Every landing in gymnastics is a controlled collision. She's absorbing the energy of a 4'8" body launched skyward, and that energy has to go somewhere on contact. With a narrow foot, that impact is concentrated. With a Roman foot's wide forefoot, it spreads. She doesn't just stick landings because of technique. Her base was architecturally built to not slide. If you have this foot, structural reliability is your game. Weightlifting, gymnastics, combat sports, any discipline where the difference between winning and losing is whether your base holds under maximum load. You're not just stable. You're the most mechanically stable platform the human foot produces. But there's a shape on this list that takes stability even further. All 5 toes sharing the load equally. That one plays a completely different game. Square foot, the unbreakable baseplate. All 5 toes at nearly the same length. The widest, flattest forefoot possible. People sometimes call this the peasant foot. That tells you everything about how poorly most people understand foot biomechanics. The other foot shapes we've covered act like levers or springs, concentrating force at a point to generate movement. The square foot makes a different trade entirely. With all 5 toes sharing load equally, you have maximum possible surface contact with the ground at all times. There's no leading edge, no narrow point of failure. The entire front of your foot is the contact surface. What this produces is elite shock absorption. In sports with repeated high-impact loading, MMA, wrestling, heavy powerlifting, most foot shapes are accumulating microstress at their structural weak points every single rep, every single takedown. Your foot has no structural weak point to accumulate stress at. While other athletes' feet are quietly fatiguing under load, yours is distributing that load across the widest possible base and asking for more. Khabib Nurmagomedov retired 29-0. His entire game was built on one principle: get his opponent to the ground and control them there. But that control starts with his own base. Opponents couldn't move him because the foundation they were trying to displace had no mechanical leverage point to attack. His foot wasn't just supporting him, it was actively removing the mechanical options his opponents needed. If you have this foot, indestructible power under load is your default setting. Any sport where the person who controls the ground wins, you start that fight with a structural advantage that training can't manufacture in someone else. The next shape looks unstable. It's the opposite. Celtic foot, the all-terrain navigator. Medium big toe, a longer second toe, and then the rest of your toes dropping off in an uneven cascade. If you've always felt like your feet look asymmetric or messy, this is you. And that asymmetry is doing something specific. Most foot shapes are optimized for one type of surface interaction: straight line push-off, lateral torquesy, uniform load. The Celtic foot is built for something harder to define: real-time micro-adjustment. Because your toes are all different lengths, they engage with the ground at slightly different moments. On a flat gym floor, that staggered engagement can feel like subtle instability. But on irregular, unpredictable terrain, each toe is reading a different part of the surface and sending different sensory information back to your nervous system simultaneously. It's not instability, it's a multi-channel grip system. LeBron James operates at full speed through some of the most contested, unpredictable movement spaces in professional sport. Bodies colliding, surfaces changing, defensive angles shifting possession by possession. His feet aren't finding stable ground. They're creating grip on ground that isn't offering any. The Celtic foot doesn't need perfect conditions. It was built specifically for when conditions aren't perfect. If you have this foot, ambiguous terrain is your home court. Basketball, rugby, trail running, any sport where the surface you're moving on changes faster than you can plan for. Your feet are already having a conversation with the ground that your opponents can't access. Germanic foot, the precision instrument, a long, powerful big toe. Next to it, 4 toes that are nearly identical in length, creating a wide, rectangular platform across the front of your foot. That's the signature. What that broad, even platform does is less about force and more about information. In neuroscience and biomechanics, there's a concept called proprioception, your body's ability to sense its own position and the surface beneath it in real time. The broader and more evenly distributed your foot's contact surface, the more sensory receptor area you're placing against the ground with every step. More receptor surface means higher resolution feedback to your nervous system about exactly how the surface is shifting before you commit your weight to it. Think of it as the difference between reading the ground in standard definition versus 4K. Every athlete is receiving feedback from their feet. The Germanic foot receives more of it, faster, with more spatial precision. That's not a small advantage in sports, where the margin between a perfect movement and a failed one is measured in millimeters. Tiger Woods won 15 major championships with a swing that remained mechanically elite for over 2 decades. A golf swing is a controlled explosion, massive rotational force generated through a base that has to stay precisely calibrated throughout the movement. His competitors practiced the same mechanics for the same number of hours. But the sensory precision of what their feet were reading from the turf during that swing wasn't identical. Tiger's base wasn't just stable. It was gathering high-definition data on every microshift in weight transfer and sending that information back up the chain faster than most feet can. If you have this foot, Precision under dynamic load is your edge. Golf, throwing sports, trail running, any discipline where the quality of a single movement depends on your nervous system reading the ground with accuracy. You have a sensory advantage built into your architecture. There's one shape left that doesn't specialize in any single one of these advantages. It carries most of them at once. Hybrid foot, the all-rounder blueprint. Your big toe and second toe are exactly the same length, with the rest descending cleanly from there. That symmetry isn't random. It's the biomechanical equivalent of a Swiss Army knife. The Egyptian foot has superior propulsive economy in a straight line, but trades some lateral torque for it. The Greek foot has elite rotational capability, but the lateral shift in load can create stress on flat surfaces over time. The hybrid foot sits at the intersection of both. You have enough big toe length for efficient forward propulsion and enough second toe length for lateral stability at push-off. You're not the most optimized foot for any single movement pattern. You're the only foot that performs across every movement pattern without a structural compromise. Every other shape on this list has a specialty and pays a mechanical price somewhere else to have it. The hybrid foot's trade is that it doesn't have a single dominant weapon. What it has instead is no mechanical weak point. Kevin Mayer holds the world record in the decathlon. 10 events across 2 days, spanning sprinting, jumping, throwing, vaulting, and distance running. A highly specialized foot would give him an overwhelming advantage in 3 or 4 of those events, and a structural liability in the others. His hybrid foot is the architectural reason he can be competitive at 10 different things simultaneously. The no-weakness blueprint isn't glamorous. It wins anyway. If you have this foot, multidiscipline versatility is your superpower. Triathlon, CrossFit, decathlon, any sport where being exceptional at one thing isn't enough, and good at everything is the only path to the podium. Flat foot, the misunderstood weapon. No visible arch. When you stand, your entire soul contacts the ground. Every podiatrist you've visited has probably called this a structural problem requiring correction. They were diagnosing it through a clinical lens, not an athletic one. Here's what's actually happening. A standard arched foot uses that arch as a spring. It compresses on impact and releases stored energy on push-off. That's an advantage in certain movement contexts. But a flat foot makes a different trade. It sacrifices the spring for maximum surface area and hypermobile ankle joints. Your foot isn't missing a structure. It's prioritizing different ones. In water, this trade is devastating to the competition. A standard foot has a rigid arch that limits how much surface area the foot can present to the water during a kick. A flat foot presents a broader, more flexible surface with greater range of motion through the ankle. Biomechanically closer to a fin than a standard foot. Every kick moves more water. Every kick generates more propulsion per unit of effort. The clinic calls it a deficiency. The pool calls it an unfair advantage. Michael Phelps owns 23 Olympic gold medals, the most in the history of the Games. His flat feet are one of the most documented parts of his physical profile, and for good reason. His ankle flexibility allowed a range of motion in his kick that swimmers with standard arches spent their entire careers trying to approximate through training. They weren't less dedicated. Their feet were offering the water a different deal. If you have this foot, hypermobile performance environments are where you live. Swimming, martial arts, wrestling, any discipline where joint range and surface contact beat spring-loaded stiffness. You weren't born with a structural deficiency. You were born with a weapon that most people spend their lives in the wrong sport to use. 8 foot shapes. 8 completely different biological blueprints for what you were built to dominate. None of these is the best foot. Each is simply the optimal tool for a specific athletic environment. The athletes who win aren't always the ones who trained the hardest. Some of them are the ones who found the sport that was already written into their architecture. Drop your shape in the comments. Are you a Greek hybrid or a Roman baseplate? I am Noah, and I'll see you in the next video.